We've had this table in our basement for a while, and we were going to sell it. But before we did, I wanted to try and restore it, or at least strip off the red paint and make it look like wood again. It's kind of a cool design how you can pull it apart, add these extensions to it to make it different lengths. I looked this up and concluded that it's probably pretty old. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try and take it all apart and see if I can remove the paint. I always think using a hand screwdriver like this will be easier than it actually is. I made it through about 3 screws before I switched to a drill. Much easier. I did my best to not lose any screws as I went. The latch that holds the 2 sides together was a little rusty, so I was hoping to clean that off too. And with that, let's try and remove some paint. So I had this old paint stripper laying around. Spray it on, wait 30 minutes, paint should come off. Let's see how it goes. No. It really didn't work that well. So I put some more on, a lot more, on all the panels. While we're waiting, I decided to try and remove the rust from the latch. A wire brush should do the trick. I feel like now's a good time to say that I've never done a project like this before, so if you see me do something and you're thinking, there's a better way to do that, you're probably right. Great, that was pretty easy. Back to the panels. I really just wanted to see what was under this paint to make sure this project was worth doing. After sanding it, I liked the wood underneath, so I figured it's worth doing, and I kept going. I sprayed it some more, and scraped a lot, and kept spraying and kept scraping. It didn't really want to come off, so I just kept applying the paint stripper, and kept scraping. And yes, I did wait about half an hour each time I put on the paint stripper before scraping it again. I made it this far before I wasn't having fun anymore, so I decided to look up how to actually remove paint. I figured out there are more effective paint strippers out there, and especially considering all these curved edges that I'm going to have to tackle, I picked some up. I went with this because it said fast, and I didn't want to wait. It was like this clear gel you painted on. The paint immediately started doing this, and I assumed that was good. Oh yeah, now we're talking. I decided to go work on the main part of the table instead. It was really hard for me to just sit there while letting the paint stripper do the work. But I was patient. This part actually was very satisfying to do, although it got tiring real fast. And that concludes day 1 out of many more than I thought. I started off with a fine grit sandpaper because I didn't want to cut through the veneer, but it wasn't really doing much, so I went to a coarser grit, and that seemed to do the trick. I'm not a fan of these coved edges. The paint sticks in them, and I just don't like the way they look, but I'll fix those later. Alright, time to tackle the part I've been avoiding. My expectations are extremely low for how easy it will be to remove the paint from these legs. Once the paint starts curling up like this, that means it's ready. As you can tell, this is going great. Even with the really strong paint stripper, it did not want to come off these curved legs. This piece wasn't that bad though. Even if I do get the paint off these legs, I'll still have to sand them, which just sounds awful. After concluding that it's absolutely not worth it, I decided to just cut off the legs and replace them with something else. Something preferably less round. Cutting the legs off did scratch up the surface a bit, but sanding seemed to make most of the scratches disappear. Also getting rid of these little feet. Don't like them either. Oops. But there we go, the legs are off. Oops again. I promise I don't drop things that often. I returned to these panels and cleaned them up as well. Hopefully you can guess that the sanding took a lot longer than I'm showing. And that was the end of day 2. I decided to replace the legs with a 4x4. I think it'll be easy to work with. I just hope it matches the aesthetic of the table. My blade wasn't quite big enough to cut it in one pass, so I had to do 2. I really tried to keep everything square and the same length, but I probably could have tried harder. There we go, 4 legs that are more or less the same length. To attach them, I'm going with pocket holes because I think they're strong and easy enough to use. They'll also be hidden under the table, and I can remove the legs if I ever want to. I decided to glue the bottom piece back on, but also use dowels to keep things aligned. It wasn't until later that I forgot to actually glue them in place though. Things still weren't quite lining up, so I decided now's a good time to put these things back on. And after just a little bit of adjusting the legs, things started to line up, more or less. Here's me figuring out how I'm going to glue it. Here's my solution. Just kind of lift it up with my back and rub glue under it. It got the job done. Sort of. To replace these ugly little feet, I used a scrap piece of pine I had laying around and just cut it into squares. Or I guess cubes, more accurately. I decided to use dowels to hold these in place as well, and glue. Before the other glue dries, I have some time to try and remove paint stuck in all the little dents and divots of the table, where sanding didn't really get to. This thing is not easy to flip. And that's the end of day 3. Today was a lot of final reassembly before finishing touches. I'm also going to try and remove the paint from all the edges. One of the panels wasn't fitting together, and that's because a dowel broke off in it. I think it's a dowel. They're plastic, they're not wood. Anyways, for the edges, I started with hand sanding, but that did nothing, so I went with my random orbital. That still didn't remove the paint, so I went with the paint stripper. While waiting for that to do its job, I attached these pieces. It would have been a lot easier to do this while the table was upside down, but oh well, here we are. I really wanted to get rid of the indented cove edge on this table, so I took a roundover bit to it. This definitely helped, but it didn't get all the way there. Some final sanding did though. There we go, an edge I like. Just about done, ready for finish. There were a lot of dark spots on the table that I wanted to try and lighten up, especially along the edges. After a short Google session, I decided wood bleach might work, if I could get it open. There we go. The instructions said to just mix it with water and paint it on. After starting, I thought of doing only half the table to see if it actually has an effect. Once it dried, I could tell it was getting a little lighter, so I kept applying it. Over the next few days, I applied 6 to 7 coats of this stuff, until it got to a point that it really didn't seem to be getting any lighter, and the dark spots were still there. So that's just the way the table's going to be. I got some wood stain and some polyurethane to finish the table. After a quick sand, I was ready to apply it. There's lots of little dents and dark spots in the table, but that's just its character, the way it wants to be. Also, I did sand through part of the veneer. Oh well. I actually really like this part of projects. The finishing feels like kind of the final stretch, and it gives wood a whole new character. For this stain, I brushed it on and then very quickly wiped off the excess with a paper towel. I did that everywhere, just one coat, and that was plenty. I don't know about you, but after staining, I think it looked great. After letting that dry, it was time for the polyurethane. I heard that the real secret to putting on polyurethane is to just apply it as evenly as possible. And I tried my best. I did give it a very light sand in between coats as well. I ended up doing 2 coats on the bottom half and 3 coats on the top surface, since I figured that would be getting the most use. And there we go, all done. I was very happy with how it came out. I think the square legs instead of the round look good. The color and the finish looks great as well. We did decide to keep this table in the end. I like to think that the world would be a more beautiful place if instead of getting rid of things, we fixed them up and gave them new life. There'd be less trash, and the stuff we have would be more valuable to us. I get not everyone has the means to do this, but I wish we all did. In the end, I think it was totally worth it. We got a nice table, I learned a lot, but most importantly, we made something a little more beautiful.